pianists, colleagues, teachers, and friends. Today we're talking about how to teach the Scherzo in D minor. This is Opus 172, number 9 by Cornelius Gurlitt, and it sounds like this. And on from there, there's more of that tranquilo middle section, and then you go back and you play that fiery A section again. If we haven't met before, my name is Jana Williamson, and welcome to my home piano studio in the suburbs of Chicago. I love this piece. It's such a great etude for students. It's very, very exciting. And there are so many technical things to unpack in this. I would really qualify this as an etude, even though it's titled Scherzo. But the actual pitch content and rhythmic content is very limited, so there's only a few things to work on. Because it's exciting to play at least the A section, students usually learn that section very quickly. So we're gonna have pretty much two different diametrically opposite approaches to working on the A section and the B section. I will be sure to talk about both of those in this video. As far as musicality goes, it conjures up a lot of what we think of Robert Schumann's music and his two personas that he used in his writing, Florestan and Eusebius, of the fiery, passionate one and then the calm other part. And so it juxtaposes those two characters very well in this piece. And whereas a lot of Schumann is very difficult for students to play, this is solidly an intermediate piece. My last long-form video was on Stephen Heller's Warrior Song etude, and I mentioned in that one that it should not be your student's first experience with four-note chords. This is a great example of a piece that uses a very limited number of four-note chords, and so this could be a good repertoire piece for your student to work on that just has a few of those, and this would be easier than the Heller Warrior Song. So let's briefly touch on those four-note chords. They happen at measures 17 and 19. First one is just an A major four-note chord in both hands, which you play together, and then you come into a downward arpeggio. And then it's a D minor, same thing, both hands, four-note chord. And then there's just two more four-note chords that your students will just have to learn. Measure 21 and 22, and then we've got D minor. The beginning of the piece is actually broken triads. So we start with that D minor second inversion, first inversion, an interesting, and then A major first inversion. Then we literally just go up the inversions for D minor. So all that to say, students playing this piece should have had plenty of experience with inverting triads. So I've said this in many other videos, but a standard technical warm-up in my studio, starting at the elementary level, once they know their triads, would be to just do your inversions. Blocked like that, and then broken. And then we also would start, after doing that, we would start doing 2-octave arpeggios and then expand that later with the thumb tuck or crossing. I don't like using those words because it's not what we're doing, but we can get into a discussion about arpeggios another day, but I am not an advocate for tucking the thumb under and creating a true legato connection because it causes the arm to do a lot of this, and this motion can be injury inducing, so we want to avoid it when we can. So if you look at 17 and 19, I'm going to make sure my arm is aligning, but I'm not going to worry about a legato connection. If I do this in slow motion, I just jumped down. Same thing is true in measure 15. And you notice I leaned my torso back to play that so that my right arm, I'm really low on the keyboard, so my right arm can come over. And that's one of the main technical points of this piece, or any piece like it that uses a lot of the keyboard, would be to align your body move your torso back so your arm has room to move so that the forearm and elbow are following the hand around and there's no twisting or reaching like that, but just moving as one unit. Pianists are not finger players. They are whole arm and ultimately body players. And so we want to think of this as a great piece for your student learning, that it's all one unit. The arm is all one unit and the fingers are simply an extension of the arm. To actually learn the pitches of this, we would block. With the one exception in measure 2, that is all D minor and A major triad inversions. So my students would have already experienced those, and it'd be very easy to then think, oh yeah, all I'm doing here is D minor and A minor. You can certainly circle the triads within their positions if that's helpful visually to see what's going on, and make sure they're hearing this is just that alternation between D minor, the tonic, and A major, the dominant. Now the funny thing about this is how Gurlitt has written it rhythmically, because he has split the right hand measures into half. So you get 3 16th notes and then another 3. But we're in 3/8, which should be felt 1 2 3 1 2 3, or 1 1 1. And so splitting it in half is actually really kind of working against that natural meter. And it's kind of playing with it, almost like a hemiola would be felt, of displacing the beat. I don't think that's what he really wanted. I think he was just enjoying kind of messing with it a little bit and thinking in those broken chords of groups of 3. The left hand keeps the 3/8 meter very solid. 1, 1. Your student needs to feel this in 1. And so you'll need to work on that with some movement, however you want to work on it, listening to a teacher demonstration or a recording, and then letting the left hand really root it. If you tried to block it both hands in rhythm, you would highlight that rhythmic ambiguity. I don't think that's a great practice here. I think better would be to block the right hand alone for learning pitches and then play as it's written, both hands. And just make sure your student truly understands what the meter is, even though the right hand is kind of messing with that. This section is all quite loud. My copy, at least of my old Masterwork Classics book, is missing the first dynamic, which is present on the IMSLP copy of Mezzo Forte. It's present in measure 52, where we come back to the A section again. So Mezzo Forte down to Fortissimo at the end of this A section before we transition to the beautiful lyrical B section. So since we have this Fortissimo with a very limited number of 4-note chords, this is a perfect opportunity to work with your student within this just very limited context of how to play loudly, how to get a big full sound, how to use our bodies, our arm weight to really get a big sound. And because the chords at measure 21 and 22, 23 are marked staccato, I think you can use a very fast motion. Remember, what makes a note louder on the piano is the speed of attack. So I'm thinking of this no holding, no gripping. I'm not sitting on the note at all. I am just going to very quickly play it and follow through and be done. Almost like you're kind of flicking it a little bit. It's going to give that a very sharp, big sound. So this kind of motion. You could think that you were pushing off towards the piano. And pro tip, if you put the pedal down right before you play it, it will open up the dampers and give a really big ring. So pedal down and then flick. And then the last chord there in measure 24 is piano, subito, suddenly piano. So find the keys, depress the pedal, and then just let the arm weight very gently drop in. which is the perfect segue to take us into the lyrical B section. I actually find that students struggle much more on this section than they do on the A section. So let's break it down a little bit. This is written kind of in chorale-like form, like very homophonic, 4 voices, bass, tenor, alto, and soprano. But the problem is that there's these ties across the bar line in the top voices in each hand, which again displace the rhythm. So Gurlitt was really having fun with messing with 3/8 when he wrote this. The best way I know to practice this is to play just the soprano or just the tenor or those two together. Make sure you're really counting in 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Make sure they first of all know that that's almost identical in the soprano and tenor, that that's the melody. And even take the time to cross out the tied notes. Just put a little pencil X on them to show I'm not going to play this top part on the downbeat while the alto and bass still play. And then really just do lots of slow motion thinking practice through this. So this is beat 1, 1, play the soprano and tenor, play just the bottom voices. Besides the middle C in my right hand, and talk through that. It seems super obvious, but sometimes you literally just have to verbalize these things or X out the tied notes so that there's no confusion, and visually what you're seeing is making sense with what you're going to hear with your ear. Once you've talked through that, work through it in slow motion, then you can play it more in rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Watch your students' hands for tension and see if they're trying to really hold this, because it is complicated and there's things that have to tie over the bar line. It can be really tension-inducing. Shake it out after each 4-bar phrase. Breathe and start over again. Ultimately, the pedal will help connect things, but the legato pedaling in this section is not a substitution for holding the ties over, because if you don't hold those tied notes and then you clear the pedal on the downbeat, they won't be there. It won't have a legato sound. So this is something that pianists have to get used to and coordinate the 2 hands and the foot. There's also these lovely phrasing markings in the 2-bar phrases at 33, so you can work on beautiful phrasing with your student. First, just with the melodic voice. The other voice in, and the notes on the downbeat of 34 and 36 can be louder because that's the peak of the phrase. 2, 3, 1, 2. It can have that forward motion towards that downbeat. So again, don't think that section, just because it's got less arpeggios and less movement around the keyboard, don't think it's easier. I think it's actually harder. And speaking briefly about difficulty, if you're not familiar with these Masterwork Classics books, Jane McGraw includes a suggested order of study right after the table of contents in the beginning of the book, and this one is the last one on her suggested order for this book 5. If I were her and I were creating this book right now, today, I probably would have put this in a higher level. It is a little bit of a step up technically from the rest of what I see in this book. So this should not be your student's first piece in level 5 if your student is, really there. It can be a bit of a stretch technically. They can have a little more time to work on getting it up to tempo, but it's very motivating, and it's a great capstone piece for, I've done a lot of pieces in this book, and I'm finishing up with working on this very exciting one. If you're interested in thinking more about difficulty of individual pieces, then would you check out my repertoire difficulty worksheet? It's a series of questions across 4 categories that you can just ask about any individual piece to help you level it, and think about, what does my student already know? What capabilities does she already have? And what might be new in this piece that might be especially difficult, or perhaps at this point above her level. I love talking about difficulty and leveling. It's one of my favorite topics, so do check that out. I'd appreciate it. All right, I hope that gives you a few ideas on teaching this very motivating piece by one of my favorite composers for intermediate students. If you have questions or comments, please leave them below. Check out all the links in the description of this video, and I wish you all the best in your teaching and playing.